Ladies and gentlemen, this is internet personality Vangelus, ninja consultant and amateur toy reviewer, here with a look at the many times delayed six-shotting debut piece in Mastermind Creations' reformatted line. This is the Super Gladiator Terminus Hexatron, and he has magnets holding his box flap closed. True story. So how six-shot is this guy? He's pretty six-shot, run through a filter of sharp angles and deep-cut ridged surface detail. I love the sculpt, but it does push things to an extreme that's understandably left a part of the audience out in the cold. Personally, copious vents and plentiful pointy bits are right up my alley. Also up my alley are the slavishly on-topic colors. Hexatron's palette is incredibly six-shot, with a maybe creamier off-white than the originals. He also has some hot pink panel work in very limited quantities, and I think it's a bummer that fan demand caused that part of the color scheme to be dialed back. It really broke up the white for me in particular. However, it is rumored that those apps may return on another run of the toys, so we'll see. Oh, and Hexatron's got shiny red eyes and a pink brain! Think about it. As far as guns, this guy's got the giant pair of white cannons you'd expect him to have, and the way he holds them is really smart. Instead of relying on the friction of his posable fingers, there is a 3/4 of a hole running down the inside of his palm that firmly grips the weapon. I love this idea, especially as this is the first time I've seen this done as a solution to solid accessory handling on a posable fingers toy. Looking at you, 3A. Original to the Hexatron design are a pair of sword sheaths that contain swords. The sheath mounting points are individually swivelable, using the same trick that the Airborne Squad use for their hip wings. And the swords have very drift-like kanji engravings on their durable black blades. The same 3/4 cavities in Hexatron's palms give a solid grip to these cosmic katanas. Rounding out Hexatron's accessories are the hidden geared unfolding shuriken, found in every single wheel axle on his body, 6 in all. This is a great Mastermind Creation style Easter egg feature, though I do find it kinda hard to get the Hex to hold these throwing stars. My best solution is to wedge the wheel connector into the palm and between the index and pinky fingers. Then you get the thumb over top of the blade, you know, like how you hold a real shuriken that comes out of a wheel that's part of your body. All this talk of shurikens, and I'm surrounded by spinning fans! So this guy's posability is posable. His head is on one of them ball joints, one of those ones where you get a real amount of jostle and wag and loll, and he can be all like, "Hey, baby, you ever been consulted by a ninja with a removable face?" Oh, God! His shoulders have got some outward rotation with a cool little detail. These kind of have a buttery soft detent. And then when you detent it outwards, you kind of reveal this underarm hydraulic detail. And that's one of those things where something didn't have to be in there. It serves no other purpose than a visual cue that this guy has stuff inside of him, and I kind of like it. It looks like a gear. It also rotates forward and backward with no detent, but plenty of stiffness and smoothness. His elbow joint, it's got a swivel at the top and bottom of that elbow joint. That elbow thing is basically its own little separate piece. And there's kind of a clickety-clack corncob ratchet joint on there. And this looks like it could be what he has instead of a wrist joint, except that he totally has a ball-jointed wrist with a little bit of range in every direction. And it's super stiff, to the point of sometimes kind of snapping itself back into certain positions because the friction is like yanking back on it. Now this guy's got posable hands, and what that means is he's got that thing where all of his fingers are on their own joint on the knuckle, and there's only one joint on the finger, so they're always kind of curled, but this guy kind of runs with it pretty well. And his thumb is on a ball joint. It's a little bit hinky, but nothing too bad, and he can totally be all like thumbs up, so he can be like, listen up, ninjas are cool. One thing I'm going to show you that's not posability related, but still kind of relevant, is weapon storage. Of course, he's got them sheaths with them swords in them, but what about them guns? This wasn't in the instruction book, but you can kind of just stick them back there like that. You can also have them stick outwards like his sheaths, so he's got, you know, some kind of visual thing going on. You can also plug them in up here if you want, but then they look pretty stupid. Or you can rise them up and make them part of his little pair of wings, and, I don't know, whatever you think is aesthetically pleasing. You can also just take them off and put them on the table. His waist has got a joint, and much like the Mastermind Steampunk Seekers, each of these sheaths are on their own little rotating ring that is separate from the other one, so you can wave these around however you want to find your optimal aesthetic angularity. His hips have got an extremely soft ratchet. It's clicking, but you don't feel the ratchet when you're moving them forward and backwards. However, you are feeling that ratchet. His thighs just swivel, as you do. His knees, much like the outward motions of his hips, have got some of them ratchets. You can even see them there. And his feet, they can move forwards and backwards with a buttery, quiet ratchet joint. And, they can tilt. So he's clearly a superior toy, according to the 2013 colossally overtold in-joke, for which I'm, I guess, partially responsible. If you want, you can also pose his ninja wings, kinda. So he can, when he gets excited, he can flap them. He's like, "I'm consulting!" And that's about it for his posability. Oh, these chest wings, do they get in the way? Surprisingly, he doesn't even hit them until his arm is pointing all the way forward. And then if they do get in the way, you can just nudge them out of the way. Now they're out of the way. I don't know if there's like some kind of special cut on the angle here, or if I'm just overthinking engineering around chest wings, but this dude's got some pretty good posability. If he had one problem, it would be that it's extremely hard to get his legs to be stock standing together unless both his feet are pointing forward. If you want to have some more natural look to his posing and have the legs splayed outward slightly, it kind of puts him between ratchets on his hips, and they often end up, that far apart. Not necessarily a bad thing, it just means that in general, this guy has a little bit of trouble looking relaxed, but and again, ninja consultants, when do they ever look relaxed? Not very often. Before transforming this guy in any direction, there's a sort of base state to put him in that is the root of all other forms. There are actually a couple of other basic stems one level above this on the transformation tree, which I was surprised to have gotten used to within a day of messing with Hexatron. I can even keep the sword sheaths attached, sometimes. Focusing more on the overall engineering than any particular conversion, I wanted to say that I was very impressed by the sheer number of solid lock-in points. Several of them are highly specialized and not used in every mode. This nullifies most of the "I think this goes here" factor, and shows a lot of design care. Also, the way that the outer panel shells of the shoulders can rotate on their own axis is simply inspired. My only common problem with the transformation on Hexatron would be that once the legs are folded together into a solid mass, you seem to have to unfold them apart slightly to do a 180-degree turn at the waist, and that's almost able to happen without pulling apart the leg block. The wing backpack just starts getting in the way. Also, several modes do need the guns and sometimes swords to be parts formed on and off of hardpoints. Boo-hoo. Let's get going with the mode closest to Hexatron's robot form. The Wolf mode is a huge improvement on the G1 version in its front half. The head and front legs are downright vicious looking, and all have the bonus of a great range of posability. The head's got a ball joint and swivel, and the arms have the boon of all the robot mode's jointings. Unfortunately, while the rear does have specialized paw pieces and a basic forward and backward range of motion, the critical flaw is the inability to rotate those paws outward. As a result, many poses end up with Hexatron's rear toes pointing inward in a very awkward way. Regardless of that limitation, there are still enough potential positions between the well-posable front half and basically posable rear half. The Wolf mode is very okay, and thankfully it's not the only place this guy can go. This has always been my favorite 6-shot alt mode, and Hexatron pulls off the APC form pretty well. Looking a lot more like a wheeled battering ram than the G1 version, I will admit that things are a tad front-loaded here. This is due to the lack of the G1 toy's double rotating swing bar that would connect the shoulders to the flanks of the robot mode. The absence of the swing bar is necessary for Hexatron's look and posability, but it also means his APC mode's wheels are set a little far back. Though, to the toy's credit, despite all appearances, the weight is still centered near the back, which means Hexatron won't take any momentum nosedives while driving around. Also, for whatever reason, either side of the APC can tilt its wheels synchronously inwards. I could see this as a way to get around uneven terrain. Whatever the case, it's also a way to make use of the weird, hinged single-wheel components. Moving on to another land vehicle. Looking about as convincing as its source material, Hexatron's tank mode is the one that inexplicably makes a point of using the sword storage slots in the wing pieces. The aligned flat base of the tank tread sculpting and the addition of the sheaths as forward cannons gives some solidity to the tank's appearance. The upper cannons are somewhat posable, and I kinda like how the forward wheel assemblies are flipped sideways like hover pads. This was always a lower tier mode for me on G1 6-shot, down there with the Wolf mode. On Hexatron, I feel it at least comes off as more threatening and less face-down robot bending his legs over his back. My other favorite 6-changer mode is the Jet, and Hexatron does not disappoint. Locking together solidly, there's a lot of design love focused into this form. There's even landing gear, though the front parts can be incredibly hard to deploy once the nose cone is sealed up, unless you lever things out with a tool of some kind. I just say pull them out while the legs are split. My only real problem with this mode is that I desperately wish the wings could have extended somehow to be longer and add to the giant flying blade thing motif Hexatron gives off. Oh, and there's another Easter egg style feature here. The center claws on the Jet's propulsion system can open up to reveal an even bigger boost of propulsion. Center claws being the wolf claws that are on the Jets always have wolf claws on the go be an aviationist. It's a great touch that helps the rear of this form feel more complete to me. The final prescribed mode is the cannon form, which is primarily the Jet mode after a 180-degree rotation at Hexatron's waist. This is kind of the Jet mode on a handle, which does look sort of like a space gun. Hexatron enhances the visual delivery through both his sword sheath cannons and the hyper-energized pink paint app that represents the cannon's main discharge point. You can also hold this like a handgun if you want, though there is no fake trigger bit to pretend to twiddle, as much as you might want to try. Much like the APC mode, this is a great update to the G1 source material that doesn't go much farther. So those are the 6 points of Hexatron's hexagon. But like the 6-shot that came before him, you can do some hardcore ninpo and unlock all kinds of secret modes, like Wing Wolf mode. Look guys, it's Wing Wolf mode. The blatant and canonized fan mode that totally murdered a Magnus. Spoilers. I'm mostly showing this to you to prove that you can do it, and to show that Hexatron has room for a bit of fan mode fun if you are so inclined. I know P.O. figured out one or two neat-looking things, like a space boat, but I haven't yet had a chance to steal his copy of Hexatron to learn those dark secrets. I mean, I could just watch his video, but there's no glory without a trophy, you know? Straight up, should you consider buying Hexatron? If you dig his bladed-up extreme aesthetic overhaul, then yes, you should. Pointy edges and copious vents aside, he's an incredibly solidly built toy, made to survive constant hands-on play, and that's exactly what he needs to be able to do, having at least 6 modes for you to run through. I am very impressed by how solidly every form locks together. My first worry about a posable version of 6-shot was the potential fragility of filling out his form with joints, and that fear has been entirely set aside. You can grab and twist this guy, and admittedly, if you do it hard enough, it'll come apart, but it's not like he's a Car Robots Deluxe, where you gotta just make sure the ball joints are all in the right place. If Hexatron had any major downfall, it would be that he is a posable version of the G1 design, with a few bells and whistles attached, and little else. Most of his design triumphs are very subtle, and while 6-shot hardcores are the most likely audience for Hexatron, they may find him the most run-of-the-mill to handle, too. He hits all the bases, and then he's kind of just done. Speaking for myself, this toy feels fantastic. I love the solidity and the aesthetic, and while I wish there was something more than a 6-shot overhaul within him, Hexatron hits every keynote he needed to hit. And I'm kind of just a greedy person. If you like what you see, you'll probably love what you feel once you have him in hand. And hey, if the swords bug you, they can be left in the box with almost no detriment to the figure experience. I very much recommend taking a shot, or 6, at this reformatted debut piece. Anyway, this has been Internet Personality Vangelus, and to be honest, my biggest excitement is the fact that I may well be able to get this toy remade into Great Shot and friggin' Shadow Maru. Henge like a proper consultant, baby.